Hello everyone and welcome back. Today's video is going to be a little bit longer than the other two. I had about 7 hours of footage to condense into this video, and you'll see at the end that I actually ran out of battery on my iPad to record. I thought about re-recording and doing another large-scale painting, but it felt disingenuous when I ended up liking this large-scale piece in the end. And I didn't really want to do another large-scale piece trying to replicate what I had already done, especially if I ended up being somewhat satisfied with the end result of the large piece. At the beginning of this video, what you saw was me wetting down the 2 sheets of paper that I intended to work on. I used the biggest brush that I could, and midway through I figured there was a lot of dripping water, and I rent this apartment, as I said, so I got some towels to put underneath to catch anything that fell. The sides are reinforced with painter's tape, and quite honestly, it's not ideal. I'm using 2 drawing boards and kind of smushing them together. The painter's tape is there for reinforcement, but I feel like with the weight of the paper and how large scale it is, it inevitably buckles up and starts to lift at the edges. While it's not ideal, it is what I have to work with for the time being, considering the space I'm in and the amount of time that I have in my day-to-day life right now. As I mentioned before, I'm renting this apartment, but I have a roommate that I'm renting with. So the space I'm painting in right now is our living room. Whatever I do in the living room, I need to pick it up or be able to pick it up by the end of the night so that we can both move about the apartment the next day. This limitation actually creates some really interesting results when I paint. I find that I have to make things decisively and not fiddle as much as I originally would want to, especially in a larger piece like this. Whenever I work larger, I think I subconsciously think about the price of the paper. Watercolor paper can be spendy, especially if you're buying it in larger sheets like this. Something that helps me work my way through a piece is I'll take a scrap piece of watercolor paper and I'll test out a color that I want to use next. Specifically, if it's a warm color like the red that I want to use in the plants, I'll make sure that I have the type of red that I want down before taking it to the paper. I find that when I create paintings and when I create art, I really want to be able to feel as if I can play with the piece. If I don't like how it's working out, I want to feel as if I can be spontaneous and be able to change my direction if I feel that it needs to be changed. One of the barriers to such a feeling and being able to work with spontaneity can definitely be my subconscious knowing of the price of my art supplies. You'll actually see as we go throughout this video that my tendency to over-describe things started to get in the way. I felt as if I were slowly leaning more and more towards my wanting to describe everything on the sheet of paper, and I routinely had to step back and look at the large piece from across the room to try to figure out what was going wrong. A lot of the cuts that you see in today's video, especially towards the end, is just me trying to hide the fact that I got up from this painting a good 100 times to look at what it was doing from across the room and figure out what step I want to take next. One of the downsides to today's setup is that I'm always really close to the 2 sheets of paper that I'm working on. A way to combat this is me routinely taking steps back a good 5 to 10 feet to look at what's on the sheet of paper as a whole rather than my up-close view of it. I find that my value and my sense of composition is really positively informed when I'm able to take a step back and look at the piece as a whole, rather than continuously being only inches from the sheet of papers. So, I did film this quite a while ago, and this piece has been finished for a few weeks at this point. In fact, the video files were transferred and put into my editing program the night that I finished this painting. So you may ask, why did it take about 2 weeks for you to edit, voiceover, and upload this part 3? Well, life kinda got in the way. This whole making videos and recording myself shindig is kind of what I went to after graduation to help motivate myself to create art and to see what do I need to work on versus what are my strong points when I'm painting. As a lot of people probably are after graduation, especially in the past year or so, I find myself extremely busy and at a loss at the same time. Painting is not my full-time job. Unfortunately, I would love that to be so, but I do have an almost full-time job right now that has required a lot of my attention and energy in the past few weeks. I try my best to get about an hour or so of drawing, sketching, or painting in a night, but that just doesn't happen every single day. When I have days off that I'm not busy, or nights that I find that I have more energy, I've slowly picked away at this video because it is quite fun to edit through this and think about what I'm going to say. I love painting so much. It is near and dear to my heart. Obviously, I went to school for it. I got a degree in painting. But it's been a very different experience watching myself paint in these videos, and I feel like it's somewhat enlightening. I look at these videos that I've recorded and I'll kind of chuckle at myself of like, oh, look at what I did there, or, at least this is where things started to go wrong, and I can definitely take that into the paintings that I make in the future. I am also the type of person, in my free time, I don't really watch that many TV shows. I more so will find myself scouring YouTube, watching painting videos, reviews on different projects, and simply enjoying watching others create so many beautiful, wonderful, crazy, fantastic things. This sounds a little bit fluffy, maybe, but I minored in art history because I have a deep interest in the history of the world, and I find that art can say so many things about a culture. Watching videos online through YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, whatever it may be, I find that speaks to another section of culture in today's world, and it's amazing to have so many subcultures and informational outlets at my fingertips, whether I choose to rely on them or not. One thing I like so much about YouTube is that it's so personal to everybody's experiences, and I really enjoy listening to people tell their stories, whether it be through their visuals, editing, or through their own words. So it feels somewhat natural to me, at least at this moment, that I want to put my 2 cents in. I think, if anything, this would be really great for me to look back on as I get older and further into my career to see what my thoughts were around creating and how did I create, how did I paint versus maybe a year from now. One thing I really value in life in general is the ability to be flexible, and that anything can happen at any moment. So I really don't know what's gonna happen within the next few years. And if anything, it'd be wonderful to look back on the memories that I did have around painting, especially right after graduation. So what you see me doing here is what I believe is the borderline of when I started to get a little too finicky with this painting. I thought about color temperature and how I wanted things closer to me to be a lot more warmer as opposed to the leaves that were farther off in the distance. And then I started to feel as if the layout wasn't quite where it needed to be. I felt the composition was a little... it wasn't sitting right with me for one reason or the other. And then I thought, well, things just need to be more saturated in the front. So you see me trying to make the leaves more saturated that were closer to the front. And then I thought, well, it just needs more definition. So for the next few minutes, you see me trying to fight my way to making the leaves more defined, making them more saturated, putting more detail into them, like, oh, maybe the planes of light across the leaves aren't defined enough. And in the end, I looked at all this work that I put into the painting, a good 4 hours by now of just pure defining these leaves, and I thought I went too far. It's kind of funny how while I was in this painting, I had no inkling of the fact that I was going farther and farther from my goal. Looking back on the video, I can pinpoint, hey, this is where things started to get a little too much. You went a little too far. It wasn't until the last 5 minutes or so that I was painting where I kind of started to get this feeling of, oh no, did I do too much description? And looking at this video now, I definitely did. I took 20 steps further than what I wanted this piece to be, and it just wasn't looking the way that I wanted it to look. So this pause in the video is me reevaluating what I want to do. So I went in with a brush and I wiped it all away. I tried as gently as I could to brush the edges with a paper towel and my paintbrush, and I wanted to get rid of a lot of the lines and the saturation I had built because it just wasn't working. So once I got to a place where I figured it was good, I stepped away and I took about an hour-and-a-half break away from the painting to do other things. Sometimes this is the best thing that I can do when I'm painting, because if I'm staring at a sheet of paper for 4 or 5 hours long, I find that my sense of how the piece is going is really distorted, because I get something like a tunnel vision on what I want to create. I'm unable to see the big picture or how it overall is doing and why it's going in such a direction. So, after I took a break, I went back into the piece and I redefined just a few select places with more saturation. After that, I thought about the fact that I was trying to draw lines within the leaves, and I considered the fact that maybe I did want to have a drawn element within my painting, but not following the contours of the watercolor that I laid down. So I took another step back, I looked at the painting, and I went to take out a few colored pencils to start to draw in the leaves with line art. Before painting and before picking up my painting major, I really enjoyed drawing, and it has slowly come back into my life now. So as I graduated from college, I picked up the colored pencil more often, and I find that I am re-entering a passion with line through a drawn element like pencils, charcoal, and erasers. My last year or so of college, I was trying so hard to learn what I could about watercolor that I kind of separated watercolor from drawing. I still painted like I drew, where I want a lot of definition and I wanted a lot of detail. That was the way I drew, so that's the way I started off painting. As I progressed further into exploring the watercolor medium, I feel as if I felt I couldn't have drawn elements within the painting. It all had to be watercolor only. And then we come to my last semester of college, where I started thinking, but why not? And this is kind of where we're at post-graduation. A feeling of, why not have colored pencil and watercolor together? On that note, thank you so much for joining me in today's video. I hope you are having a peaceful time wherever you are in the world, and I'll see you next time. Bye!